ይስጥልን የተከበራችሁ አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን ይህ የአዲስ ቅኝት የስነ ጽሁፍ ዝግጅታችን ነው።
Where is your home? Is it Jamaica or Canada?
It's both. I mean, I carry my home around with me, to be honest. Haile Selassie and the League of Nations. Do you know his secretary was a Jamaican woman?
No.
Well, he was in exile, Una Marston. Yeah.
Oh my God. You mean when he was in exile in London?
Yes. But she also, I think, accompanied him to the League of Nations. And
yes.
She's very much a part of, she's a famous Jamaican writer and broadcaster,
Today we have Olive Sr., the prolific and the great Canadian Jamaican writer, novelist, essayist and poet. She is named Poet Laureate of Jamaica recently. We have discussed a lot of issues about literature, her literary experience, immigration, and black racism and the pandemic. She recently published pandemic poems, and she read a few of them to our viewers. I hope you'll enjoy our conversation.
እናንተ አብራችሁን ከኛ ጋር እንድትቆዩ በአክብሮት እንጋብዛለን። ለፕሮግራማችን አዲስ የሆናችሁ ሰብስክራይብ እንድታረጉን፣ ላይክ፣ ሼር፣ ኮሜንት ስታደርጉን ደግሞ ለፕሮግራማችን ብርታት ይሆነናል። ቶሎ እንዲደርሳችሁ ደግሞ የደውሏን ምልክት መጫን አትርሱ። እስከ ፕሮግራሙ ፍጻሜ ከኛ ጋር እንድትቆዩ በአክብሮት እንጋብዛለን። መልካም ቆይታ።
Jamaica is a very interesting country, as we said.
Yes.
But when I think of Jamaica, I music comes to my ears.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But I never think of Jamaica, as a literary world.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a land of music. It's a land of beauty. It's a land of beaches, and So you told me that you are focusing on the Caribbean issues.
Yes.
So tell me what makes you more focused on the Caribbean? What's the historical issue,
Right.
even the existing problem in Caribbean society, and what music and art can play to change that?
Right. Yes. Well, I mean, I consider myself a Caribbean person because, the Caribbean was split up among European powers for hundreds of years, and that has really shaped us. I mean, we have this history of enslavement and indenture and so on. It's a very fractured history. But at the same time, it's interesting that Caribbean people, we're all from small islands, but because we share common history, common language, and so on, there is also a sense of being Caribbean. If I meet a Caribbean person anywhere in the world, we're like cousins, we connect. But the islands have developed quite differently. And Jamaica is sort of stands out because Jamaicans we're all maroons, we're all rebels. And so we have a history and culture of resistance. Yeah. Jamaicans have been resisting for hundreds of years. Some of the greatest, and the whole idea of slavery in Jamaica it was very brutal because the plantations were huge. Yeah. It's not like, say, American plantations, which are relatively small number. We're talking about plantations with hundreds and hundreds of people enslaved. And so there was always this resistance to enslavement. We have a whole Maroons who fought the British for hundreds of years and established their own society. Yeah. And I think it's that sense of resistance, not sitting back and taking it, that it infuses everything we do, even today. Jamaicans are almost, they say, ungovernable because everybody's an individual doing his or her thing, which makes it hard to, in many ways. But I also think this is what enables creativity. There's so much creativity here, not just music. Right now, Jamaican writers are all over the world winning big prizes, doing well in literature. There's art, painting, sculpture, so on, filmmaking. It's all the arts are sort of blossoming. But music, of course, is what drives the whole image and identity. And I take it, about the Rastafarians and Haile Selassie and so on. And that's part of the resistance too, because the whole idea is, we reject this whole British imperialism, this Western culture. We're going back to the motherland of Africa, which is Ethiopia. And so Rastafarians have just created this alternative lifestyle, which is also based on foods that you eat, and it's a whole way of life. But they also help to drive the African consciousness and the African element in the music, which is what drove which has always been there. Even like we have a lot of indigenous churches, and indigenous church music is very African based, with drumming and so on. And the early music of Jamaica arose, I think, out of that desire to go back to Africa. And a lot of the African connections had not died. People said, they were cut off. No, they were there underground in rural Jamaica, like where I grew up. And so it just came out in the music when in the 1960s, when people like Bob Marley and so on were young. And they brought that music from the country, from the rural Jamaica, where the music was underground, is there, to Kingston, and started to create what is now reggae and so on. But it came out of a lot of different streams. It came out of rural Jamaica, came out of the church, the indigenous churches. It came out of the African connections, which were never lost. Of course, the European as well. And our connection, our closeness to North America, and what was happening with Black music in America at the time, rhythm and blues. And, I, as a child in Montego Bay, I was listening to WINZ radio station in Miami. That's because at that time, I don't even know if we had a local station. So Jamaica has always been open to all of these influences. And even today, this is what is coming out in the music. And in turn, we are influencing the world.
Do you think that's because of the culture? It's true, even in Ethiopia and in most African countries, that level of emancipation, they are not emancipated from the barriers of the society, or the culture.
No, yes. So it's this kind of paradox. On the one hand, we all shout loudly and talk about freedom and so on, but when it comes to the personal level, you'll stay with a man who's beating you up because so at the personal level, or bad employment practices or that kind of thing, it's still there. I mean, we still have a lot of work to do to emancipate ourselves.
Exactly. Emancipate yourself from mental slavery. That's the line.
As Garvey said, we still have a long way to go.
Long way. Hopefully we will make it, with knowledge.
Yes.
We can cross that bridge, hopefully. But the problem is multi-layered, so it's not easy to overcome all this problem overnight. The ideas were vented through reggae music. Most of the ideas in Bob Marley songs, African Unite, Get Up Standard, Buffalo Soldier, all these resistance songs, the Mystic River, and the Redemption song. All these songs shows what the Jamaican psyche is, and like you said, it's directly related with the Ethiopian psyche. Even though they never met, but their mentality and their is the same. They need freedom. They need to be an independent human being.
Yes, exactly. I mean, the main the direct African influences here are, of course, West Africa. Ghana, Nigeria, Waterville, Ghana, Nigeria, and so on, those places. But there's a way in which Africa is connected in terms of musical instruments, rhythms.
I remember when Bob Marley's 16th birthday was celebrated in Addis Ababa when I was there.
Yes.
I went to Shashamane and
you've been to Shashamane? Yes.
I went to Shashamane and meet with the Bobo Shanti. There are different,
that's amazing.
Yes, the Bobo Shantis and using those drums and
the drum. Yes, the drumming that really influenced reggae at the start, the Jamaican music. But I've been to Australia, and the Aborigines of Australia connect with Bob Marley reggae music. You go anywhere in the world, because I think it's a music of the people. It's a music of redemption. Yes. It's a music. When it started, it was about all of us getting together, peace and love. And now it's dance hall, which is a bit different. But it's music that unites people all over the world, I think.
Olive, you were my mentor. And I like your editing style. But what is it like to edit immigrant stories?
Yes. Yes. I so enjoyed working with you and the other immigrant women on the Shoe Project.
Yeah.
And it was a learning experience for me too. It really, because we don't realize how difficult it is out there, or people, some of whom have been in Canada for such a long time, and especially people with language whose first language is not English. I had, so it was an eye opener for me, and I felt really privileged to be able to work with the Shoe Project, and it made me realize, though, that we need to pay more attention. There are lots of projects out there for immigrants, but we probably need to pay more attention to enabling people more quickly to gain proficiency in English or in French if you're in Quebec, because this is just so important for everything to have that, that language proficiency. So if I did this again, it was one of the things I talked about, that I didn't even feel I had the skills to help people sometimes. You know what I mean? There are some people who are more advanced at English and some are not. And I just feel that maybe we need more help from the people who are trained to work, who are trained in how to teach language, because that's not my skill. My skill was to encourage. But I must say, when I watched that film of all the women presenting their stories, the stories we had worked on, I was just so proud. You all did such a fantastic job, with the stories. And I'm really glad the stories are out there, and there's this opportunity to hear these stories, to hear more of this.
Yeah. Do you think a Shoe Project helps to show the life of an immigrant woman to other Canadians?
I think so, but I don't know how widespread it is, how it's getting out there. But I thought the idea of using a shoe as a symbol to tell a story was wonderful. I don't know how you felt, Sashina. Because if you think about it, the shoe is what you stand on. It takes you everywhere, and it's just such a wonderful way of bringing out the stories. If I said to you, just tell me your story, it's hard to know where do you begin, how do you tell it, but this just automatically helps you to shape it. And it's interesting that your story, for instance, wasn't about your shoe. It was about how shoes linked you to your father, your past, and so on. So it was very rich. So I just think it's a great idea, a great way of telling stories. And I wish there were more opportunities out there for more Canadians to, hear these stories and see them.
Africa suffered a lot during the slavery, and after that, during the colonialism, except Ethiopia.
Yes.
All African countries were under colonialism, and Ethiopia is suffering now. After all these years, after most of African countries liberated, Ethiopia is now having this colonial influence through the Nile River, through Egypt, and
yes.
They are forcing Ethiopia to sign that colonial agreement, which the British Empire were signed to control the Nile from the source.
Right. Yes.
Now Ethiopia is a free land, and she has never been for the last 3,000 years. But now they are forcing Ethiopia to sign that agreement, colonial agreement. And the rest of Africa, during the 1960s, in the years of independence, most of Africans were standing together. Haile Selassie was the moving power that time. And now most of Africans are divided.
Yes.
And it looks like, they don't have the same stand. They have one organization, the AU, the African Union.
Right.
They are not come to terms, on an issue of Africa. So when I think of Bob Marley's African Unite, when is that day the Africans come together and say no to any colonial influence and to protect themselves, their interest from I don't know if that day comes.
It's interesting what you've said about Ethiopia today, though. I mean, we're aware of what's happening there, but the way you put it in terms of resisting a kind of neo-colonialism. But, when in the 1960s, when Jamaica became independent, it was also a time when a lot of African countries became independent, Nigeria, Ghana, and it was a time of optimism. There were all amazing leadership, in these countries, and people really felt, wow, we're going to create new societies, we're throwing off the yoke. And it's really sad to see how that promise, hasn't really been realized by a lot of places. I mean, Jamaica is and the Caribbean is one of the few places where we have free and fair elections. And, still democratic systems that still function, which is not to say there aren't a lot of problems, but there is, and so one has to be constantly fighting to defend whatever freedoms you do have. But it's, I can remember the promise of independence and how people of that generation, how we feel about sort of almost a betrayal by our own people.
In Ethiopian history, the Adwan victory, the first victory over the white invaders, the Italians, in 1896. After that victory, when King Menelik defeated the Italian forces in Adwa, and Marcus Garvey and his friends started the Pan-African movement in the US. And they established that the Black Sheep and the
Black Star Line,
and the Back to African movement started. But it never came to a reality to this day. And now the Caribbeans, Jamaica and other Caribbean countries are free. They have to stand. They have to stand for Africans, for Ethiopia. And like Ethiopia did that time. To protect because their homeland and their origin.
Though the thing about the Caribbean, though, is it's not just Africans. For instance, a country like Trinidad is half, or Ghana, half Indian, because Indian indentured people they're Chinese, these are very mixed societies racially. And so some people hark back to their African origins, but it's not everyone, there's resistance to that as well, to that idea.
That's interesting. Anyway, all the oppressed people has to stand for their right and for their freedom.
Yes, yes.
That's a very important thing. And let me ask you about Haile Selassie's visit. His Imperial Majesty has visited Kingston in the 1960s.
Yes, yes.
Have you been there? And do you have any memory of that visit?
I have a feeling I don't think I was in Jamaica at the time.
Yeah.
But I mean, honestly, you see the photographs. Still, you just have to look at the pictures. And, you know, the Rastafarians invaded the plane. I mean, you can see a picture and he was a small man standing there looking totally, absolutely bewildered.
Yeah.
You know, I think somebody said he cried because it was, you know, here it is, these bearded, because of course, the Rastas in those, they were wearing dreadlocks and they look dread, you know, they look wearing their robes and just surrounding the plane. They just broke through all the protocol and everything and insisted on being, you know, a part of whatever was going on. And what's interesting, at that time, Rastafarians were being persecuted. They were seen as a threat to, you know, to the government and everybody. And but what is interesting, the government of the day, I think this was before Selassie's visit, sent a team of people to go to Ethiopia to explore the idea, because the Rastas said they wanted to go back home. But what is interesting, Rasta representatives were included in that mission. You know what I mean? They inserted themselves into the whole discourse. And so the same thing when Haile Selassie came, they said, well, we're going to be part of this. We don't care about protocol. And normally it would be very grand people invited, you know, to the king's house. Oh, no. So that is, to me, that's part of the assertiveness of Jamaicans who still do that kind of thing. And if you talk to immigrants who all went to England at the same time, the Windrush generation, people from all over the Caribbean, and they said the people who were in the forefront, who were the most aggressive in asserting their rights and arguing, were the Jamaicans, you know. And this is why I think they said that among the enslaved were warriors, the Ashanti warriors and so on, who were shipped out from Africa. You know, the troublemakers were sent to Jamaica.
Yes. Oh.
And a lot of them escaped and up into the mountains became Maroons. But people like to say that all Jamaicans are Maroons, you know, who were fighting for their freedom and asserting, you know, their rights.
So the British were not happy during colonial time about Jamaica. They have a lot of resistance.
But, you know, even though we say that, and I mean, in theory, it sounds good and it's expressed. But when I look at, say, some of the things that are happening in Jamaica, like today, such as gender-based violence against women and so on, and or the fact that women in Jamaica are both mothers and fathers, because they will allow men to they'll have a lot of children with different men without the men supporting the children, or the men will have a lot of children with, you know, that's just part of the culture. But it is showing, though, that psychologically we're still mentally enslaved in terms of not speaking up for ourselves, not thinking, you know, we need to take charge of our lives, especially some women.
That's right.
Although other women, Jamaica has, I think, in the world has the highest number of women in management positions. But there's still a glass ceiling, you know. There's still levels.
አድማጭ ተመልካቾቻችን እየተከታተላችሁ ያላችሁት የስነ ጽሁፍ ዝግጅታችን ነው። እንግዳችን ደግሞ ታላቋና ታዋቂዋ ደራሲ ኦሊቭ ሲኒየር ነች። እናንተ ሼር፣ ላይክ፣ ሰብስክራይብ እያደረጋችሁ ከኛ ጋር አብራችሁን እንድትቆዩ በአክብሮት እንጋብዛለን። መልካም ጊዜ።
Do you know his secretary was a Jamaican woman?
No.
Well, he was in exile, Una Marston. Yeah.
Oh my God! You mean when he was in exile in London?
Yes. But she also, I think, accompanied him to the League of Nations, and
Yes.
she's very much a part of, she's a famous Jamaican writer and broadcaster. She, you know.
What's her name?
Una Marson.
Una-
UNA
Yes.
MARSON.
That's interesting. Thank you very much. Thank you very much telling me this. Can you send me some information about her? If you
Yeah, there. In fact, a small book has just come out here. The University of the Press has done it. I might have a copy. I don't know if I can get a copy before I go. And I also have a book about her in Canada.
In Canada.
Yes, she's one of those people who she worked for the BBC as a broadcaster for a long time, and she wrote and so on. But she also is associated with Haile Selassie while he was in exile.
Interesting. Is she a Rasta or?
No. And this was before that. No, she's very middle class lady, proper.
Oh my God.
Went to no, quite the opposite.
You see,
But she wrote poetry. She was a writer and a playwright. And she really wrote about the Black experience at a time when nobody was talking about Blackness. Because, it's a very colonial society. So she's quite remarkable in her way. She did. But it's only now I think people are recognizing her significance.
We have to know, as Ethiopians, we have to know this lady because she's attached with a beloved king of Ethiopia. Unfortunately, he was the last emperor. Some people say that when we lose the last king, it looks like we lost the attachment, the material that brings us together.
Yes.
So for the last 50 years, Ethiopia is in turmoil.
Yes.
Yeah.
But there's also a film I saw. I think I was still in Canada when I can't remember where I saw it. Maybe it was here. Somebody has done a film about Haile Selassie, who lived, I forget the town in England where he lived.
Yeah.
I'll try and find out. It was very interesting because there were people who remembered him, and what it was like having this royal person living among them. I think it was in Bath.
It was Bath.
Bath, yes. A really interesting film.
Interesting. Thank you very much for bringing this into.
But I'll see if I can get the Una Marson book. I
would love that. If you come, maybe you will give me. I will find the other one in the Toronto library. Maybe if I can.
Oh yes, you could. Yeah. But I know I have one in about her life. That's in Canada, and I'm not sure if I have this one, but.
Olive, what is your challenge in the creative process? You are a woman, Black, and family leader. With all this, you are a productive writer.
Yes.
It's not tough?
I guess it is, but, I don't have a family, so, I don't have children to look after because I'm not sure. If I had, I probably would have not been that productive. The thing is, writing is what I do, and I just do it. I just go along and do it. I teach writing. I have writing students, and I say, I wish when I thought of being a writer, somebody had also told me that it's not going to bring you any money. So you should also train yourself for another profession to earn the money that writers don't. You have to be a famous writer to make any money from it. But the thing is, I wouldn't want to live another life. You know what I mean? Writing has given me the world because I'm a writer. I've been able to do things that I come from a very poor background. And if I weren't a writer, I guess I got an education, so I probably would have been a professional, which is what people imagine, or, you became a doctor or a lawyer or whatever. But I wasn't interested in any of that. But I I've seen the world, right? Writing has enabled me to have a lot of opportunities. And so it's hard, but at the same time, I've been able to express myself through writing. My entire consciousness is bound up with my writing. I don't separate my life from my writing life, because my life has always been that of a writer. So and I guess it's easier for me because I don't have kids, you know what I mean? I think if you have a family and you have to deal with that, that's another dimension. I take my hat off to the women who do that.
Yeah.
And I've never bothered. I mean, I'm a woman, I'm a Black woman, I'm all of these things. But something, I've never thought about these things. I've just got on with my life. I just done things. And some things have been successful, some things are not. And I'm conscious of the fact that, their life isn't that easy if you're, a woman of color. But it's never bothered me, to be honest. I've never sort of worried about these things. I've just pressed on, and done what I think. For me, the important thing for me is my writing and the fact this is how I get back at the world, so to speak. I say, look, this is what I've done, and this is what I will continue to do, and that is what has kept me going all this time,
Interesting. You studied journalism, and but have you ever been practiced journalism or?
Well, something, I was a journalist from I was in high school because I started writing for the Gleaner, which is a big newspaper here, when I was still in sixth form in high school. And then when I left school, I didn't know any writers, journalists, or anything. So the only writers I knew about in Jamaica all had columns in the newspaper. So I thought that to be a writer, I would need to work on the newspaper. So when I left school, I just went to Kingston, joined the Gleaner as a journalist, as a trainee, and stayed with them for a couple of years. And then I got a journalism scholarship. I got two, one to England and one to Canada. So that's how I studied journalism. But to be honest, once I did that, I never went back to journalism. To me, it was just a stepping stone, But I mean, all the jobs that I've had have to do with language and publishing and writing and so on. But I never went back to working, say, on a newspaper or anything after I graduated.
So you become a full-time writer and you earn your life from the books you write?
No, I don't earn anything from the books I write. Or I earn very little from the books I write. So I do a lot of other things. I've always worked, I've been in publishing as in Jamaica. I was head of I published Jamaica Journal, which is a cultural journal. I've worked with the university as a book publisher and so on. I've been a speechwriter. I've done a lot of work, but it's all related to writing.
A speechwriter for the Jamaican leaders like the president or always for whom you...
Well, sort of, yeah, but not, yeah, maybe, but not big famous people, maybe business people. But everything I've done is writing related, but all of those are the things I do to earn money, to earn my living. And now, I mean, since I've been in Canada, I'm a writing mentor. I do writing workshops, etc. So I do a lot of different things to earn a living. But I earn very little from my books, And I think I am like most writers in the world today. The only ones who earn money are if you have to be very, very famous, or you have to have a book that is a bestseller. But then even people, if you don't write a second bestseller, then you go back to hustling, People don't understand how the system works. But most writers I know have another job, because you can't make a living from just writing books,
That's true. And any of your books, your short story or your novel, turned to a movie, a film, or any of your poems sung by a singer?
No, I wish they had. I've had options on my stories for movies, but somehow they've never found the funding to do it. So I haven't had that. So no, though I must say, I mean, there's been a lot of my work internationally. A lot of people have written dissertations, a lot of translations into different languages and so on. So I guess I'm a success at that level. But it's still, for me, it's a struggle, to make it.
How many languages your stories were translated?
Oh gosh, my stories and poetry, lots and lots. All these sort of standard European languages: French, Spanish, German, Italian, but also Chinese, Japanese, etc. And one of my children's books has been translated into Korean, but also it's been published in South Africa by a South African publisher in 4 languages.
Oh, in local.
Yes, English plus I can't remember. The main South African languages.
Yes.
So it's wonderful.
It's wonderful. What's the title of your children's book? One translated. What's the title?
It's called Anna Carries Water. Oh. And it's about a little girl who wants to carry water on her head like her big brothers and sisters. And the illustrations are wonderful. And so it was very easy to translate it, publish it in, say, South Africa, because all they did was change. There's an illustration with the Jamaican flag on a building. They changed it to the South African flag. Yes. Oh. Because the illustrations could be in Africa, the landscape, the people, and so on.
Talking about children's, you write children's book, and what was your childhood like? I mean, some recollection of in relation with your writing.
Yeah, well, as I say, I grew up in deep rural Jamaica, very isolated part of Jamaica, cockpit country. But we were poor. It was small farmers growing crops, yam, bananas for sale and so on. But we didn't know we were poor. You know what I mean? It's not like now you grow up in an urban, in a city, and boy, you're really suffering. Because we had enough to eat. The climate in Jamaica is wonderful. We had, and there was a sense of community. People helped each other. We made our own entertainment and so on. But it's funny that even as a child, I thought, I looked at the mountains and I said, I'm going to go over these mountains. What's beyond the mountains? You know what I mean? And then I spent part of my childhood in another part of Jamaica with family members who are quite well off. Yeah. So I lived a different life. They were my European relatives, or looked European, and they had a big house, big property. They had migrated and made money, abroad and come back. And so my life there was very different because I was an only child in this household. I couldn't run out and play with all the other kids around as I did at home, at home. And so a lot of my stories, my short stories, I think, reflect children that are in between these two worlds. Yes. I mean, they're not autobiographical, but when I started to write, this was something I wrote about, the children that were sort of caught up in between different worlds. And then I went to high school in Montego Bay, which was very different. And I must say, I had a British education. People quarrel about this, but we had a really excellent grounding in education, although the curriculum was entirely British. We were never taught a single thing about our country. And one of my most popular poems is called Colonial Girls' School, because that's what it talks about. We weren't told anything about ourselves. But I think what happened is independence came along in the 60s for these countries. And suddenly we started to look at ourselves and saying, hold on, we're not little English men and women. You know, we're something entirely. And so a lot of scholars started to do a lot of research. This is when the University of the West Indies started. And people started looking, going out into the field and researching the music, the dance, the culture. And this is when we discovered, as I knew from my childhood, that the culture was essentially African, because the vast majority of people are of African descent. But we were told all along that we were British and our culture was British, you know. Suddenly we were being told, wait a minute, there's this other Jamaica out there to be explored. And so a lot of my writing and my life, everything I've written, is about sort of that exploration and finding that other Jamaican, finding out who we are. And I feel privileged to have grown up in the country when I did, because I know everything there is about Jamaica. A lot of kids now don't know where fruit they see in the market. They don't know what the tree looks like. They don't know how it grows. Whereas I was part of nature. I was part of. And so one of my books that I did is an encyclopedia of Jamaica, of Jamaican heritage, which I researched and wrote as a way of giving back to children something that I had, which was a knowledge, of the Jamaican culture, the stories, the meaning of things. We had Duppy stories, which is about ghosts. We had Anansi stories, which is about the spider hero of West Africa. We had, we just had so much. It was such a rich culture that we grew up in, which in a way was lost. It's been lost in a way.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's really amazing. It's it's a great honor to have you in our show, Olive Senior, Poet Laureate of Jamaica, and hopefully we'll have another conversation in another issue when you come back to Toronto to celebrate your laureateship.
Yes.
Congratulations once again. And maybe,
please, can you read one more poem?
One more poem.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, I'll read one from my pandemic poems. I'll read you. This is a poem about my childhood, growing up, and we grew bananas. That was a cash crop.
Yeah.
People don't know, but the banana trade started in Jamaica. This is where the export of bananas began. And up to when I was growing up, everybody grew bananas because that was a cash crop, and you shipped it off. And so anyway, this is about that. But it's also about migration, because so many of us have left.
Yes.
And it's what we've left behind. It's not all. It works both ways. So I'll read it. It's called My Father's Blue Plantation, because you spray the banana leaves with copper sulfate and it looks blue. You're surrounded by blue.
Mm.
Gardening in the tropics, we revel in hot tropical colors. My father's land was blue. In his prime, his banana plantation came right to our doorstep. We lived deep in this forest of leaves made blue by the treatment against leaf spot disease, which he humped around the fields in a battered spray pan. On Banana Day, which I think was Wednesday, we went off to school, eyeing all the way the bunches racked in blue banana trash, waiting at the roadside for the truck. We fervently prayed ours would find acceptance in the sight of the inspector, for every bunch was earmarked to pay for something. Sometimes it was shoes. We didn't choose those in hot tropical colors, since each child could have only one pair for school and chapel, and we were taught only black or white would find favor in his sight. But all this was ages ago. We children fled the blue for naught and light, where we buy up all the shoes in sight. My closet is filled, finally, with a rainbow of shoes in hot tropical colors, which look marvelous against the snow. My father's house, I'm told, is visible from all directions now. Some crops grow only in young gardens. Alone, fan in sand and stone in breeze, my father lets in all that air, lets that hot tropical sun pour down to fill his blue lungs and warm his old and vegetating bones.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That's all we have for today. I hope you enjoy our show. Next time, we will see you with another edition of our literary conversation. Have a good time.